Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today we're looking at something pretty special, I'd say. This is the all-new 2021 Ford Mustang Mach-E, Ford's first all-electric crossover SUV and Ford's first all-electric crossover SUV Mustang. Yeah, Mustang. How about them apples? So I'm going to show it to you inside and out. We're going to take it for a test drive and you better believe I'm going to tell you what I really think. All right, my friends, before we get out on the test drive, we have to talk about what we've got here because this is a lot, man. This is a crossover electric Mustang, right? That's a big load to carry, and Ford knew it starting out. This particular model we've got that we're looking at today is the all-wheel drive premium model with an extended range battery. That puts our total price on this one at about $56,000, which is somewhere in the middle to the high range on the pricing with this car. Now, Ford knew when they called something like this a Mustang, they were going to have to do a lot of things to really convince you that was the case, right? So they really started here with the styling, as you can see. Right up front, they've created a Mustang face, one of the tricks of the trade, a sculpted hood that has some nice muscular looks, a face that says Mustang from across the parking lot. And if you weren't convinced from there, when you get up close, you can see the pony right there on its nose. Now, this does not have a traditional grille because it's not a gasoline-powered car. It doesn't need that. What it does have is an air inlet down in the front fascia for the radiator, which cools the motors and the electrical hardware. And it has active grille shutters, which are currently closed. So again, doesn't really look like a grille, but that does actually function as one. Coming around the corner, you can see some really ornate LED headlights. These work very well at night, I have found, and they look pretty sexy too with the daytime running light. And the turn signal indicators actually pop. You can see those from quite a distance. This one has 19-inch wheels with black painted pockets. And because this is an SUV after all, there is gloss black plastic around the wheel wells and down the side. You can see the Mach-E emblem down on the door that tells people what this is, which is good because a lot of people look at this thing. The charging port is right here on the front fender, which means when you go to charge it, your nose in, whether you're at home or at a public charger. Always the easiest way, I think. I'm still getting my head around the fact that I'm talking about SUV-like design cues on a vehicle called Mustang. But here we go. This black plastic cladding comes around and wraps around at the rear, as you can see. And if you look at the lower fascia at the back, you're going to find no big dual exhaust tips because there's no engine. At least Ford stayed honest, unlike Volkswagen, who puts fake exhaust tips on anything, even with engines. But I digress. The roofline is really something I think deserves a look. This has a fastback Mustang-like roofline and some pronounced tips. Now, they're not quite as pronounced as the Mustang, but they do stick out and give this thing some broad shoulders at the rear, or broad hips. The roof on this one is a fixed glass roof, which plays well with the black plastic trim. You can see this whole design element just looks like one big piece of black that dives back into the rear hatch. Very clean, very nice, I think. The taillights on this, now Ford, they have a toolbox when it comes to Mustang design, and the 3-element taillights are something that they've just clung to. And as you can see, this is the iteration that is on the Mach-E. They're LED, they're sequential, they animate very nicely at night, they look great. That is probably the one design element on this vehicle that I think really makes this almost buyable as a Mustang. And of course, the Mustang pony on that rear hatch. And because this is an SUV, this does have a power-operated rear hatch that you can use the key fob buttons inside or wave your foot under the bumper just like a Ford Escape and open that thing up when you're at the grocery store. The interior of the Mach-E is one place that Ford deliberately chose to sort of go more futuristic and a little more contemporary in the design than sticking with the Mustang template. They did give us in the dashboard a dual cowl design, but the way the rest of the interior is actually laid out, you'd hardly notice. What they've done is actually sort of take a page from Tesla with the large tablet format in the center, and there's a small digital display in front of the driver. And it's pretty simple. There's a very minimal amount of hard switchgear in this car. There's a start button on the dash. There's switchgear on the steering wheel. The gear selector is down on the center console, along with a couple of other buttons having to do with the brakes and your hazards. Aside of that, this is a very clean, simple interior. One of the design elements that I really like is the sound bar that goes across the dash. That's actually speaker material, and some of the 10 speakers for the B&O sound system are behind that. The seats I'm sitting in are not leather. This is vinyl. Ford has a marketing name for it that I've long forgotten. Not really impressed with these seats. They are just as comfortable as the spongy, unsupportive chairs that were in the Ford Escape that I tested just a month or so ago. In fact, the only real difference is the upholstery pattern and the look of them. Otherwise, they're the exact same uncomfortable chairs. I really think they could have done better given this is a Mustang and all. Vinyl, steering wheel too. They don't have any leather in this car. The steering wheel itself is basically a Ford out-of-the-box steering wheel, not a Mustang steering wheel. Ahead of it, a very small and slim instrument cluster, and honestly not really even that much of an instrument cluster. It just has a few little readouts on it, and like the tablet, it can be either dark or it can be light, or you can put it on auto so it switches back and forth between day and night. One thing that's quite different from the regular Mustang is the fact that there is a ton of storage in here. The way this console is designed, there's a bin down below that you can put things. There's a bin here in the center that you can throw things. There's actually a wireless charger for a phone. The power and accessory ports are up there. Underneath this, there's a roll top for a nice big storage area down here that I've got a bunch of stuff stuck in. And you could actually put about 4 or 5 water bottles down there. This is pretty well laid out. It's just not something I'm used to in a Mustang, having some versatility and some storage and practicality. One thing I was really surprised by is the fixed glass roof. When I first got in here and noticed there wasn't a shade to close, I was kind of scared because here in Arizona, you don't want that sun beating down on you in the summertime. And what they've done is a nice coating that's inside the glass that really protects you from UV rays, ultraviolet, and infrared heat. So actually, I've driven under the sun with this thing all week, and I haven't even noticed that it was there. In fact, it's pretty dark. You don't really even feel convection heat through the thing, which is a good thing since it doesn't have a cover. This is nice. This is the most comfortable and roomy back seat I've ever sat in a Mustang. Fancy that. It's almost like an Escape. Well, so all being sort of funny aside, this is actually very nice what they've done back here. The seating height is good enough that you don't feel like it's an unnatural position with your knees perched up. Plenty of legroom, as you can see, and these seats are set for my height, about 5'8" with tennis shoes on, and there's plenty of space, plenty of headroom. This fixed glass really gives it a nice airy feeling back here. The seat, as you'd expect, folds down in a 60-40 split, giving you an almost flat low floor in the back. Pretty impressive. And when you lift that deck, you'll find that there's not a spare tire in this case, but under there you're going to find the charging kit, which has the cables that you need to charge the vehicle, as well as the spare tire sort of substitute, which is the Fix-A-Flat kit. There are a few amenities back here that fit its price range, like the vents in the rear of the console and power ports for charging, map pockets in the back of these seats, and the materials even on the back doors are just as nice as they are up front. Very cool. For the most part, I really do like this interior. I love the futuristic Copenhagen furniture store sort of style. The material quality, very good. I don't expect that in a Ford. In fact, I'd almost go so far as to say this is one of the best interiors I've ever seen from Ford, save for the new 2021 Ford F-150. It's just well put together. The only thing I'd really have to say is they need to improve these seats. These are spongy, uncomfortable, unsupportive seats that don't belong in any car, let alone something you're calling a Mustang. This interior still, though, gets 4.5 out of 5 stars. The infotainment system and most of the center stack in this car is actually a large portrait-style screen, very similar to a Tesla, and Ford has leveraged what they call their Sync 4. This has pretty much all of your controls in it for HVAC, for car settings, navigation, audio, virtually everything, all of your car settings that take you into your connectivity, as well as your owner's manual you can call up on here, which is pretty cool. There's videos and a number of other things in here that you can actually look at, and you'll need them because learning some of the car's eccentricities requires watching a video, so that is very cool. All of the drive modes are here, parking, the accessories. they've got quite a few things that are built into this. So it's important that it works well, right? And that is the one area that I did find some disappointment with this, is that like some of the other sync systems that I've recently experienced, the actual graphic, the speed of its reaction to what you tell it to do is a little bit on the slow side. When it does become difficult that this isn't lightning quick to respond to your touches when you're actually driving down the road and you're trying to deal with this while taking your eyes off the road. They need to do a better job at making this faster to respond to your touch. It's not rocket science. Just put a faster graphics card in there, do something, but this is one deficiency of this system. The sound from the B&O sound system is very good, and the visibility, in spite of this being unshielded, is actually very good. You can have a light background or a dark background. This I find works very good in the day because it washes out any sun glare that may occur at nighttime. You can dim that to a dark background. That just looks very good. And the graphics, some of the best in the business. Still though, with the slow graphic response, this system gets 4 out of 5 stars. So now it's time for a test drive. And the question I always like to ask is, how does it go? Whoosh! And 60. Well, that was easy. In this configuration, all-wheel drive premium, I've got 346 horsepower, 428 pound-feet of torque from 2 motors, one at the rear and one at the front. A lot of different ways you can order this. But nonetheless, that power feels pretty good. Now, what would I equate it to? Like a Mustang EcoBoost, somewhere in that range. Ford says 4.8 seconds 0 to 60 for this configuration. And that's about what it feels like. But of course, it's not what it sounds like, right? That was pretty drama-free. Woo! Now, I don't know if you can hear it on the video, but this has an artificial propulsion sound that I can turn on in the driver controls, and it has this kind of whoosh, woo, like this low bass hum. It's kind of electric. It's kind of like a little bit of an exhaust growl maybe, but it's woo. It's cute. Although I think they should have like downloadable sounds you could put in here, like a supercharged V8 would be nice. It's interesting. It's interesting. And it's tied to the drive modes, which in this case offered are Engage, Whisper, which is obviously quiet, more economical, and Unbridled, which I have turned on right now. Now, this other thing that this has is one pedal drive. It's driver selectable, and what that allows you to do is drive with one pedal and accelerate and decelerate, very similar like a bumper car at the carnival when we were kids. You let off the accelerator pedal and it slows down, and it's mostly using regenerative braking, and it does so pretty strong. In fact, so strong the brake lights actually come on when you let off the power pedal. So it's something that works pretty cool. I found that in daily driving, using it, it's very easy to get used to if you practice it. Where it sucks is in a parking lot where you're trying to maneuver and back up and park and parallel park things. Anything that requires you to stop and go, reverse, forward, those types of things, not such a good tool for. It's kind of fun. And the benefit to it, of course, is you get more regenerative braking and then therefore more range. So this is a powertrain that Ford, I think, has done a pretty good job on. Motor supplied by Borg-Warner. It does need some refinement in a few areas. It can be a little bit abrupt in unbridled mode, and I think there's still some tuning that they can work out on it. But overall, I think it's very well done. 4 out of 5 stars. The chassis platform is all new from Ford. It's not based on anything they've built before. Underneath the floor is a giant battery. It's a pancake flat, kind of looks like a big full or queen size mattress, roughly the same size. It fits under the floor very low, and in the front I've got a traditional McPherson strut suspension, and at the rear a multi-link independent rear suspension. And the way it's designed lends itself to good handling because you've got a low center of gravity with that big heavy battery sitting down low in the middle. What I have found though is that, well, because this big battery the size of a queen size bed is there, it's heavy. This thing feels heavy AF, and it is. It weighs about 2.5 tons, just shy of 5,000 pounds in this configuration. So what they've had to do to accommodate that in a vehicle that really isn't that big is give it a very stiff suspension, both in springs and in damping control. And while that's good for a high performance car, they haven't quite got the tuning right, in my opinion, because it has a very bobbing, bouncing ride. Very similar to, have you ever had somebody with a lowered car that was riding on the rubber bumpers and it just kind of bounced along down the road and bobbed along? Well, that's what this does. And with that heavy feeling, when you throw it into a curve, whoa, you really feel like you've got something that you're manhandling around, because it is heavy, right? So they've really tried to overcompensate for its weight and make it feel like a higher performance car with this stiff ride. But again, it's just very similar to, I had this Mustang once with some Coney adjustable shocks. I dialed those things all the way to their stiffest setting just to see what it would be like, and it was like no compliance whatsoever, and it did this bouncing, bobbing type thing. Didn't help the handling, it just made it ride like crap. So I combined this ride with steering that just doesn't quite have a good feel to it. Again, tuning hasn't been dialed in all the way yet, and brakes, which take a lot of practice and driving to get used to. Well, I think they have a way to go on this. Chassis comes in at 3.5 out of 5 stars. Well, that was fun. Little test drive in an all-electric Mustang crossover SUV. Yep. Well, now it's time to talk about value. And value's what? What is it worth the money? This is $56,000. Is it worth it? Well, when I look at value, there are a lot of factors that come into that, and price, since I just mentioned it. Electric vehicle, this qualifies for a $7,500 tax credit. If you qualify for that, you can figure that comes off of that price, which, look at what that is. But also remember that even if you don't qualify for it, that comes off your resale value the minute you cross over the curb. That's just how it works with electric cars. So resale value sort of has an artificial drop. Well, it's real, but I mean, it just happens because of that, for no other reason the minute you buy the car. So keep that in mind. That's a little factor to remember when we look at price tags on these things. Option pricing, a little on the high side, I think. That battery, $5,000. That's a lot of money for a battery, but that's what they cost out there. And quality's good, livability is actually pretty good, even though there could be more storage here. Competitiveness. Now, there are not that many competitors here just yet. There is the Tesla Model Y, which is the closest one, in my opinion, about the same size, roughly the same price window, and roughly the same spec window. I would recommend, if you're looking at buying this, go drive them both. I mean, you really should drive this. Whether you look at the other competition or not, you really should drive this before you sign on the dotted line. You really should. My test driving, it proves that you really should, right? Unless you're a Mustang person and you're just going to buy it no matter what, even if it sucks, go drive it before you buy it. All of that said, 4 out of 5 stars is what I put for value. Pretty good, pretty good. Now, when you put that in with everything we've already talked about, we have a total score of 4 out of 5 stars for this review. I think this is a pretty good first try for Ford doing their first dedicated all-electric crossover. It's got some rough edges that they still need to polish up. It's a first try, so probably in 2 or 3 years when they do a refresh on this thing, it might have some of those things knocked back. But I think they've done a decent job here. Now, is it a Mustang? I don't know. I kind of have an opinion thing there. I do have one, and linked down below when the video is ready is a video just about what I think about that. So if you really want to find out, do that. But if not, my latest video is right there, and I really would love if you subscribe to my YouTube channel right down there with the round logo. Either way, stay tuned.